Hey everybody, and let's hear these closing arguments for the Ahmaud Arbery case.
I ever mentioned Larry English's boat. Never. On February 23rd, 2020. Travis McMichael had 2 hours and 45 minutes to talk to the police. He was given an hour to write a 3-page statement. An hour to write it down. Never, ever, ever once said anything about this. So what can you go ahead and assume? A year and 9 months later. Completely made up for trial. All right, so simply put, ladies and gentlemen, completely made up.
I am a super fast reader. TM had probable cause to believe that Ahmaud stole the stuff off the English boat in 2019 and was escaping from that felony on February 23rd, 2020, so TM was going to arrest him for it.
Made up for trial. All right, so simply put, ladies and gentlemen, if you determine that this was not a citizen's arrest, this was not legitimate, he had no probable cause, you can't do this based on the law, then guess what? They're not justified in killing him. They're not justified in any of the felonies they committed against him. Not a citizen's arrest. Therefore, you're not justified. You're the initial aggressor. You're committing felonies. Self-defense. And that gets us to the charges in the indictment. So that's what we're looking at here. Based on that, at that point, you may find us guilty of all the charges in the indictment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the snapshot view of what I think you're probably going to hear.
Jurors Duty.
That was the snapshot view of what I think you're probably going to hear from the defense and what the state's position is on that. So now we're going to do some deep diving. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the juror's duty. We're going to talk about some legal concepts that you need to be aware of. The judge is going to charge you. We're going to go over the charges in the indictment. We're going to talk about party to the crime. And then we're going to kind of really get into what self-defense and citizen's arrest is. And I know it's going to take a minute. Bear with me, but this burden's on the state. So we have to go through all of these things. All right? So here we go. Juror's duty. First off, this is your search for the truth. Okay? This isn't about the state. This is your search for the truth. You are Glenn County. You decide whether they're guilty or not guilty. Not the defense attorneys, not the state, you. Your search for the truth. You determine what really happened based on the evidence presented. Okay? And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, what's the evidence presented? Well, you can go ahead and look at State's Exhibit 190, which was the actual video. 191 is the half-speed video. You can take a look at State's Exhibit 194, the night owl video. You can go ahead and take a look at 129. That's that close-up compressed, sort of enhanced for coloration video that was produced that shows the close-up of Travis pulling that shotgun up. You can go ahead and take a look at State's Exhibit 117, Officer Rash's video. You can also take a look at 124, the video from December 17th, 2019. And of course, you can always ask to see State's Exhibit 315, the frame by frame, if you want to see it. So how that works is you send a note to Judge Walmsley and you go, we'd like to go ahead and review that evidence, and you come into the courtroom. When you come to the courtroom, we don't get to say anything. Okay? Nobody gets to talk. And actually, at that point in time, you're in control of what you get to watch here in the courtroom. So I wanted you to be aware of that in case you want to review any of this evidence. All right. You are the finder of fact. Not the state, not the defense. You are the finder of fact. You determine witness credibility. All right? You're the one who decides whether you believe these witnesses or don't believe these witnesses, or how much weight you give a witness's testimony. You're going to apply the law that the judge gives you to those facts as you find them to be, and that's what you're going to do. So, you have a duty to follow the law. You're bound by the instructions and the law that the judge gave you. In other words, this isn't about becoming an advocate for one side or the other. This is about what are the facts, and here's the law, and we apply the law to the facts. You have a duty to deliberate. Okay. The reason I put this slide up is because one time we had a woman who went and hid in the bathroom for like an hour and a half. Like hid in the bathroom. And the jurors didn't know what to do. They were just sitting back there for an hour and a half and had no idea what to do. anything like that happens, just send the judge a note, okay? Anything weird happens, anything you're unsure of happens, send the judge a note. But you have this duty to deliberate, to talk about the case. Now, sometimes it's helpful to think about what's inside the circle and what's outside the circle, okay? Because there's some things outside the circle that you're not or shouldn't really talk about. And what are those? Well, that mostly concerns penalty and punishment. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be given a verdict form, and on that form you're going to write not guilty or guilty. That's all you're going to do, okay? So it's not about passion or prejudice or you disagree with the law, you don't like the law, conjecture. It's about the evidence. And so what do you consider? Well, you consider the elements of the crimes. Judge Wamsa is going to give you that. The law, the expert testimony, okay? Fingerprints, fibers, the medical examiner, the photos and documents. Look at the crime scene photos. Take a look at those photos. They're hard, but take a look at them. The testimony of the witnesses, the credibility of the witnesses, the defendant's actions, their driveway decisions, and how it led to someone lying dead from 2 gunshot wounds in the middle of the street. The elements of the offenses, the reasonableness, and above all, use your common sense. This is the time when you put on that critical thinking cap, okay? Meaning you question everything. It's sometimes really easy to see somebody and want just to go, well, I want to believe what they had to say. You know, I don't want to believe automatically that they're a liar or anything like that. I want to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. This is the time, ladies and gentlemen, that you put on that critical thinking cap, where you go ahead and scrutinize everything the people on the stand said to you. So, reasonable doubt. That's the doubt of a fair-minded and impartial juror honestly seeking the truth. It's not about seeking out doubt. It's about seeking the truth. And it's not beyond all doubt or to a mathematical certainty. No, no, no. It's just beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the burden that the state has. All right, so the evidence. The first thing you're going to want to do is determine what really happened based on the evidence, but a lot of the evidence isn't in dispute, right? I mean, we know what days Larry English called the police. We know when we have videos. We know this was on February 23rd. The homicide's on video for the most part. Okay, a lot of these things are not necessarily in dispute. What's in dispute is, were they making a citizen's arrest so that they were justified in committing these felonies against Ahmaud Arbery and then murdering him? I mean, that's really what they're arguing about here. So remember, it's not a whodunit. Glenn County Police arrived very quickly afterwards. Minshew heard the shots. The defendants all made statements at the scene immediately after. They're making statements. They're saying stuff to the police. Then, a couple hours later, the defendants are all down at the Glenn County Police Department, also making statements. But here's the thing. You've got to ask yourself, were these self-serving statements? I mean, think about it. The very first thing that we showed you was Duggan's body cam video. It was hard, right? But you got to realize, Travis McMichael is standing right behind Duggan when he rolled Mr. Arbery over. That's what he saw. That's what Greg McMichael and Mr. Bryan saw. So then you got to think to yourself, okay, what's going on in their heads? There's a dead man in the street. Travis McMichael has just shot him. Okay? The police are on the scene. There's now a video of it. So are there statements a couple hours later self-serving? You decide. The GBI did their investigation starting on May 5th, 2020, followed by the arrests. So first off, the credibility of witnesses. That's for you to determine who you believe and who you don't believe. Okay, so what does that mean is you're the one who decides whether Travis McMichael was telling you the truth or lying to you. Right? So let's talk about some of the defense witnesses. Annabelle Beasley. What did she do when she got off the stand? She walked over here and waved at them as she walked off the stand. I mean, I know you all saw that, right? Okay, so Annabelle Beasley, Team McMichael. Subi Lawrence, who is she? Boy, Team McMichael. Even after this, I mean, after the shooting, she and Brooke Perez and Diego Perez, they're going out in the boat with Greg and Lee McMichael. They're still hanging out with them. Okay, Team McMichael. Brooke Perez, Team McMichael. Up until February 11th. And then what did she tell you? Her husband, Diego Perez, had it with this. Had it with Larry English, not calling the police, had had it with helping out Larry English. He wasn't going to do it anymore because this was not cool. Why was it not cool? Because Diego Perez went inside that house with his flashlight, and Greg McMichael came up and went in the house. What was Brooke doing? My husband's in there, my husband's in there. All right, well, Greg McMichael had his gun. Travis McMichael told you that. He had his gun, Diego had his gun, Brooke had her gun. You know, everybody had a gun. Everybody in this case had a gun except Ahmaud Arbery. And so what almost happened? I mean, come on, let's get real.
I'll be right back.
It's a miracle Diego Perez and Greg McMichael didn't kill each other inside that house, right? Pulling guns out. And that was it. What did Brooke tell you? No more. Not doing this anymore. You determined the credibility of those witnesses. Now, when you consider Travis McMichael and his testimony, here's some things you want to look at. The judge is going to tell you, these are things you consider. The manner of testifying. Evidence of bias for or against a party. Does he have bias for or against Greg McMichael? It's his dad. Okay? Motive in testifying. Yeah. He wants you to come back with a not guilty verdict. It's in his best interest. Think about the probability or improbability of their testimony. I wondered why he was attacking that truck. On Holmes? Like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. I mean, do you guys understand what he was getting at? I mean, I guess we're back to Ahmaud Arbery's a carjacker. Their interest or lack of interest in the outcome of the case, meaning do they have something to gain or lose by coming in here and making up a story for you? Their personal credibility as you observe it. That's for you to decide. Not for the state to decide, not for the defense to decide, for you to decide. All right, so did Travis McMichael have a motive to lie to you? Did he have a motive to make up additional things that he had never said before? All right, did he have a motive to embellish his testimony? Did he have a motive to claim he now was confused on February 23rd, 2020? Isn't that convenient? Wow, it was the most traumatic, yeah, and I don't dispute that it was probably the most traumatic experience of his life. How did Mr. Arbery's day go for him? All right? Most traumatic experience for Travis McMichael. So he's all confused, but did manage to write out a 3-page, statement and immediately put down, on January 1st, my gun was stolen. Had all sorts of contextual details in that statement. Did he have a motive to use talking points? Okay? Well, ladies and gentlemen, did he come up here? How many times did he say totality of the circumstances to you? Did he have his talking points down a year and 9 months later? That's for you to decide. The defendant's story. The law allows you to disregard his testimony from the witness stand if you don't find it credible. The law allows you to consider as the actual, real evidence his actions at the time of the murder if you don't find him credible. Intent to commit a crime. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you got to find that they intended to commit these crimes, and how do you look at that? Well, you look at the natural and necessary consequences of the act, right? Natural and necessary consequences of an act. Deadly force is the last resort. Never point a gun at someone you do not intend to shoot. So when you start pointing a shotgun directly at somebody, what's your intention? The natural and necessary consequence of the act. You're going to kill this person. You're pointing it at him. The defendant's not going to be presumed to have acted with criminal intent, but you may find intention, or the absence of intention, upon consideration of their words, their conduct. What did they do out there? Their demeanor, their motive, and other circumstances. So when you look at each defendant separately, because that's what you're going to do, you're going to get 3 separate verdict forms. When you look at Mr. Bryan, what were his words? What was his conduct? What's his motive? What were the circumstances there for Mr. Bryan? What were they for Greg McMichael? What were they for Travis McMichael? All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the charges in the indictment. All right? I'm going to make a suggestion to you. This may help you. Start at the bottom of the indictment. All right? In your deliberations, start with criminal attempt and false imprisonment. It's just easier. You just work through that one, work your way on up, then to felony murder, then to malice murder. It's a suggestion. So what have we got? Criminal attempt to commit a felony, which is false imprisonment. What's an attempt? That's when you perform an act which constitutes a substantial step toward the commission of said crime. Mr. Bryan pulled out of his driveway and ran him into a ditch. Mr. Arbery was able to keep running. Right there, criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. Criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. This is actually what it says in the indictment. What do you have? In violation of the personal liberty of Mr. Arbery. Okay? Guess what? We're citizens of the United States, right? We live here. We have personal liberty because this is a free country. Other people can't go up and stop us and hold us and detain us. Okay? They have to actually have seen us commit that crime in order to effectuate a citizen's arrest. So you go around and you start stopping people, you're doing that in violation of their personal liberty. And what did they do? They unlawfully chased Ahmaud Arbery through the public streets of Satilla Shores in pickup trucks and did attempt to detain and confine him without legal authority on Burford using an F-150 pickup truck and a Chevy Silverado pickup truck. We all know that's what they did. False imprisonment. Now this is over on Holmes. In violation of the personal liberty of Ahmaud Arbery, did unlawfully confine and detain Ahmaud Arbery without legal authority. Once again, did not see him commit any crime, not a citizen's arrest. They are not law enforcement officers. They are not in a marked patrol car. They are not with badges on their arms. They're not in any uniform. Without legal authority. Said accused did chase Ahmaud Arbery with an F-150 pickup truck and a Chevy Silverado pickup truck through the public roadways of the Satilla Shores neighborhood and did confine and detain him on Holmes. Travis McMichael said he was pinned between the two trucks. Greg McMichael said he was trapped like a rat between the two trucks. The ultimate false imprisonment, he never left Holmes, did he? Never left Holmes. Aggravated assault. Did make an assault upon the person of Ahmaud Arbery with a Ford 150 pickup truck and a Chevy Silverado pickup truck. I got a legal note here for you. Okay, you notice how it says and. Okay, but what do we know? Mr. Bryan's driving the Silverado. Travis is driving the Ford F-150. Greg McMichael is in the passenger seat at first. Then he's in the back of the truck. So, of course, it doesn't mean and, it's or. Okay, I know that sounds crazy. Don't you love lawyers? Don't you just love lawyers? Okay, and means or. So the way you should read this is with a Ford F-150 pickup truck or a Chevy Silverado pickup truck. Okay? So, what are pickup trucks? They are objects when used offensively against someone can result in serious bodily injury or death. You hit somebody with the F-150 pickup truck intentionally? You hit them with a Silverado intentionally? Are you going to hurt them? Break a leg? Paralyze them? You could even kill them. We all know that. Hit and runs, right? Vehicular homicides. We all know this. And the medical examiner told you so. Actual injury to Ahmaud need not be shown for aggravated assault with the pickup trucks. The judge is going to instruct you. You don't have to actually hit the person. You don't actually have to injure them for it to be aggravated assault. What you have to do is place that person in reasonable fear of receiving a violent injury. This is really important, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, wow.
Did the defendants commit acts with their pickup trucks that placed Ahmaud Arbery in reasonable fear of receiving serious bodily injury? Yeah. Yes, they did. We know Mr. Bryan did. He ran him into a ditch, then tried to go at him again, then went at him another time, then backed up toward him. Now, what did Travis McMichael get on the stand and say? Oh, I just pulled up next to him. No, I didn't startle him. No, he wasn't afraid of me. Do you believe any of that stuff? Just look at the Night Owl video. Look at how Mr. Arbery tries to get away from them, and then look at them speed off after him. So all you have to do is look at that Night Owl video, and you'll know that they put him in reasonable fear of receiving bodily harm, violent injury, aggravated assault with the pickup trucks. Aggravated assault in count 6. did make an assault upon the person of Ahmaud Arbery with a firearm, a deadly weapon, that 12-gauge pump shotgun with 7 already in it. 2 steps, pull the trigger. That's all you gotta do. The evidence is that the defendants attempted to cause a violent injury to the alleged victim by shooting him. Yeah, that's aggravated assault with a shotgun. Now, I want to be really clear, okay? Travis McMichael does this with the shotgun. We see it on the video. This is the beginning of the aggravated assault. Beginning of the aggravated assault. The aggravated assault continues as he steps away from his car door and blocks the road. Now, what did he say to you? Oh, it's putting distance between me and Mr. Arbery. Was he putting distance, or was he blocking the road? You decide. Then what does he do? He doesn't stay right there, does he? We can't see this, but what do we know? He makes it around that car door, right? He makes it over here, right? He's in front of his truck, and he's moving forward, closing the distance on Mr. Arbery, intercepting Mr. Arbery, and is right here with that shotgun. It wasn't at port arms like this. It was right like this. And how fast does Mr. Arbery come around the corner? And boom, shoots him. That is one continuous aggravated assault ending in the shotgun blast to his torso, right here. Came out right here. Right? So how was he when the shotgun hit him? Like this. Right? Got it across the wrist, got it right in the torso, came out right here. So he's turned like this, according to the medical examiner. Felony murder. Felony murder is when you commit a felony and someone dies because of the felony. Classic felony murder scenario. Guy goes into a convenience store to rob the convenience store. He's not there to murder anybody. He's not there to kill the clerk. He doesn't know the clerk. But he's got a gun, right? So what does he do? Pulls out the gun and is pointing it at the clerk. And the clerk's like, and what does the clerk do? The clerk goes and tries to hit the gun away and starts punching at the armed robber, right? And then what does the armed robber do? Boom! Kills the clerk. Was committing a felony. You cannot claim self-defense. You've now murdered the clerk because during the felony that you were doing, you pointed, you were doing armed robbery, you're pointing a gun at somebody. You expect when you're committing felonies, people are going to fight back, right? The convenience store clerk's entitled to fight back, right? Imagine if armed robbers could come in and go, well, I had to defend myself against the victim of my crime. Could you imagine if that was the law? Right? I mean, but isn't that what they're saying? How dare Mr. Arbery defend himself against their 4 felonies? Isn't that what they're saying to you? So felony murder, let's take a look at it. What is felony murder? For felony murder, the state must prove that the defendant caused the death of another, check. By committing a felony, check, we got 4 of them. Do not need to show malice, okay? Meaning intent to commit the death of somebody. You know, like the guy showed up at the convenience store, he's not there to murder the clerk. Do not need to show he intended the death with the felony. What we have to show is this, that the felony directly caused the death. You pull the trigger on the shotgun, aggravated assault with a shotgun, yeah, immediately caused the death, right? That's a no-brainer. But what about the other 3? You're sitting there thinking, okay, Linda, what about the other 3? What are we really talking about here? Did the other 3 felonies, aggravated assault with the pickup trucks, false imprisonment, criminal attempted false imprisonment, did they play a substantial and necessary part in causing the death? The state's position is, yes, they did. In other words, but for this felony being committed, the death would not have occurred. It's real easy. But for the felony being committed, this death would not have occurred. All right, so when does this really apply? The defendants are in the process of committing a series of felonies. They're doing it together at the same time. The defendants shoot Mr. Arbery during the commission of the felonies. Did that felony committed against Mr. Arbery ultimately contribute and lead to his death? So how do we look at this? Aggravated assault with a shotgun? Yes. Pointing that shotgun at him, having him run away around the side of the car, Travis McMichael intercepting him with the shotgun and then shooting him? Definitely aggravated assault, felony murder. Aggravated assault with the pickup trucks. Well, once again, what do we have? Would he be dead if he hadn't been pinned between these two pickup trucks? Think about this. If he'd made it up Holmes and over on Zellwood, he'd have run out, right? If he hadn't been pinned between the two pickup trucks on Holmes, with Mr. Bryan running him towards the white pickup truck, would he still be alive? Yeah. Their use of the pickup trucks to go ahead and commit aggravated assaults on him, put him in fear of them and their pickup trucks, meant he was running away from them. He saw it, running away. Did their actions, were they such that they put him in reasonable fear of receiving bodily injury? And did that contribute to him ending up where he ended up and his death? Yes, it did. Felony murder. False imprisonment on Holmes. That's what we're talking about. Did they falsely imprison him on Holmes? We've already gone over it. Had him pinned on Holmes, trapped like a rat between the two pickup trucks, according to Greg McMichael. He's still, after 5 minutes, running away from them. If they hadn't done this, on Holmes, would he be alive? Ask yourselves that. If the answer is yes, felony murder. Check it off.
Why would you ever say trap like
Criminal
a rat,
attempted
bro?
false imprisonment. So you're thinking, well, Linda, I mean, seriously, okay?
That's your own words coming back to you, aren't you?
I mean, yeah, they pulled up to him. Hey, stop, we want to talk to you. He runs away. They pull forward. They go down to the end of Burford. He then runs away from them again. They're trying to falsely imprison him over there. Did that contribute to it? Yes. Because that's when they began their attack. They're using the pickup trucks over on Burford to put him in reasonable apprehension of receiving serious bodily harm. They're putting him in fear with their actions. What does Mr. Bryan do? Tries to, doesn't try, actually runs him into a ditch. Runs him into the ditch. Aggravated assault. So what's Mr. Arbery doing? We know he runs away from them, and runs away from them, and runs away from them. Because they have tried to falsely imprison him on Burford, and they've used these pickup trucks to do it in a manner that's likely to cause him fear. But we don't know what was going through his head. Nobody knows. That would be speculation. But you're allowed to look at it and go, were their actions such that it would put a reasonable person in fear of getting hurt? That's what you want to ask yourself. Those are the felonies in the indictment. So malice murder. What's malice murder? Well, cause the death of another person unlawfully and with malice aforethought. Now, malice aforethought is not ill will or hatred. It's not like what we think of.
These guys are
No
about to get 800
premeditation
years.
is required, okay? Rather, it's the unlawful intention to kill without justification. Okay? Well, what's justification? Justification is self-defense. Deliberate intention to kill is one way you see malice murder. I'm deliberately taking your life. I'm killing you. How do we usually think about that? Huh? You're out to get somebody. You want the husband murdered for the insurance money. You're going to go ahead and execute somebody. You're mad at somebody. You're enraged at somebody. You intend to kill them. That's deliberate intention, right? But there's another kind of malice, and that's implied malice. You are allowed to consider this when looking at malice. You may also find malice when there does not appear to be significant provocation, and the circumstance of the killing shows an abandoned and malignant heart. Don't you love lawyers? What the heck is an abandoned and malignant heart, right? Well, think about that. You just don't care. You just don't care what you're doing. You want to do what you want to do, and boy, whoever you're doing it to had better be okay with it. I'm going to order you to stop and talk to me, and if you don't, I'm going to pull out a shotgun on you. And hey, you're still going to run away from me? Oh yeah, I'm going to come at you. I'm going to intercept you over here at the corner. How dare you turn on me? Bam! Malice, right there. Remember, Mr. Arbery had to have engaged in significant provocation. What did he do? What did Mr. Arbery do? He ran away for 5 minutes. He ran away from them. Ran away from them for 5 minutes. That's what he did. With his hands out at his sides, in those baggy shorts he had on. No weapon, no threats, no way to call for help, didn't even have a cell phone on him. Ran away from him for 5 minutes. The state doesn't have to prove premeditation. The state does not have to prove motive. Okay? Not required to explain to you why they did what they did. You know what they did. Some of you may know why they did it. But the state does not have to prove exactly why they did what they did. The indictment. So here's the thing, party to a crime. How in the world could Defendant Brian be held responsible if he was in the Silverado filming all this, right? How can Greg McMichael be held responsible if he's in the back of the truck, finally on the phone with 911 when the shots ring out? Well, it's called party to a crime. That's what it's called. So what's party to a crime? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you this. Do you think that everyone involved, from the person who actually commits the crime, to someone who encourages or enlists someone to commit the crime, to someone who helps commit the crime, should be held responsible under the law in Georgia? Do you think that sounds reasonable? Well, guess what? The law does. The law says everybody involved is guilty.
Thanks for tuning in.
A person is a party to a crime only if that person directly commits the offense. Driving the trucks, pulling out that shotgun, attempting to falsely imprison, helping to trap somebody by pinning them between two pickup trucks, running someone towards a man with a shotgun, all directly committing or helping in the commission of the crime, or advises and encourages. Well, what's advising and encouraging? Hey, Travis, get your shotgun. That guy is outside. Not, hey, Travis, I need to call 911. That guy is outside. Let's get our guns and let's jump in the truck. Encouraging. Advising. Cut him off, cut him off, cut him off, is what Greg McMichael said. So that's what we've got. Ladies and gentlemen, how do you really want to think about this? Everybody gets a Super Bowl ring, right? The quarterback gets a Super Bowl ring. The guys in the field get the Super Bowl ring. The dude on the bench gets a Super Bowl ring, right? Everybody is involved. Everybody's responsible. That's what the law says. Cooperation after the fact. Now this applies to the defendants, but mostly, kind of Mr. Bryan, because this has been brought up when he was talking to Agent Seacrest and everything. So, first off, cooperation after the fact doesn't erase the crime you committed. Bryan did film the murder on his phone. He gave the phone over in the video right away to the police. He made statements to the police at the scene, at Glenn County. He then goes and makes additional statements to the GBI in May of 2020. He consented to have his home night owl video downloaded. Guess what? Doesn't matter. Cooperation after the fact does not erase what you have done. Okay? That would be like two teenagers shoplifting at Walmart, and one's filming the other, he. Both of them are stuffing bikinis into their bag, right? The fact that one of them hands over her video of her girlfriend doing it, does that somehow make her not guilty of stuffing a bikini in her own bag? No. You still did the crime. So what if you were cooperative afterwards? Still are responsible for your actions. This is about responsibility. All right, we're going to transition right now. I'm going to take a breath. And we're going to transition into self-defense and citizen's arrest.
She's been going hard.
How's my time?
I mean, she does make out like a few key points.
Person is justified in threatening or using force against another person when and to the extent that he reasonably believes that such threat or force is necessary to defend himself or a third person against the other's imminent use of unlawful force. Wow, that's a mouthful, right? Yikes. Okay, let's break it down. Travis McMichael had to reasonably believe that it was absolutely necessary to defend himself. And of course, he threw in his dad, okay, which he never mentioned before at any point in time, but he threw him in on the stand, against the other's imminent use of unlawful force. That means Mr. Arbery had to be right there, imminently using unlawful force against Travis McMichael. Okay?
Actually, let me read that.
Unlawful force against Travis.
A person is justified in threatening or using force against another person when, to the extent that he reasonably believes that such a threat or force is necessary to defend himself or a third person against the other's imminent use of
Travis McMichael.
Yeah, nope, that's not self-defense.
Okay? It's the doctrine of reasonable beliefs, and the judge is going to go ahead and charge you on this. In other words, the belief that you have got to defend yourself, that it's life or death right here, right now, has to be reasonable. Okay? Guess who this standard applies to? Just take one guess who this standard applies to. Everybody. It applies to you. It applies to law enforcement. It applies to military people. Okay? It applies to Jason Bourne, Secret Service, CIA, FBI. It applies to everybody. There is no special exception for I was in the Coast Guard. There is no special exception for I used to be a law enforcement officer. The reasonableness applies to retired law enforcement officers just like it applies to anybody. A manager of a store, okay, applies the same way. In other words, the reasonableness standard is set by society. You all decide whether this was reasonable or not. Travis McMichael's belief that he had to defend himself with lethal force has to be reasonable. So we got pointing a shotgun at Mr. Arbery when he's yards and yards away, had to be reasonable and necessary. But where's the imminent use of unlawful force by Mr. Arbery? What was he doing? He's running away from Mr. Bryan's truck. Mr. Bryan has already tried to hit him with the truck numerous times. He's trapped between two cars with no weapon. No way for anyone to help him because there's nobody out there to help him. He's not threatening anybody. He's just running away from the man with the shotgun. Look at this. I mean, take a look at this. He's not even up to those mailboxes on the side. And that's Travis McMichael pulling that shotgun up. Well, what are they going to tell you? They're going to tell you what Travis said. Oh, he was running toward me. And I could tell he was going to attack me. Is that reasonable? Who brought the shotgun to the party? Who took the shotgun out of the car? Who pointed the shotgun? The guy's running away from them for 5 minutes. Here's the thing, you cannot create the danger to yourself. That means you cannot be the initial unjustified aggressor. You can't create the situation and then go, I was defending myself. You just can't do it.
True.
He moved to intercept. He attacked him. I'm not talking about Mr. Arbery attacking Travis. All right, here's the concept of excessive force. And this is a big one, because here's the thing. If you use excessive force during your self-defense, guess what? You're not justified, you're guilty. Not justified, you're guilty if you use excessive force. Because it's force that exceeded what was reasonably necessary. You guys ever heard the term that's saying, you can't bring a gun to a knife fight? It's unfair, right? You can't bring a gun to a fist fight. It's unfair, right? You can't use excessive force. You can't call someone out and go, hey, buddy, let's take it outside. You're starting it. And then when that person starts to beat you up and is better at the fight than you don't get to pull out a gun and shoot him. You started it. You called them out. They're better at this than you. And all of a sudden, you're like, I'm scared. I have to defend myself. That's not the way this works. Excessive force. So first off, Ahmaud had to be using unlawful force against them. Remember the guy running down the street right here? He's using excessive force. He's using unlawful force against them right here, right? Then Travis McMichael had to reasonably believe that he had to defend himself against Mr. Arbery. And they're going to get up here, and the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, they're good. These defense attorneys are good. They're going to get up here, and they're going to make it perfectly, they're going to make this seem like, oh yeah, this is scary. And Travis had to pull a shotgun out on him. They're going to make it seem so reasonable. Put on your critical thinking caps. Use your common sense when they're up here giving their closing arguments. The amount of force has to be reasonable.
About this?
Unarmed man running with hands at the sides.
And
never pulled out a weapon, never threatened anybody. This is
all the way to it if they had a little break.
Excessive force. Even if you think, ladies and gentlemen, even if you go, hey, it was citizen's arrest, hey, he was really defending himself, you then still have to go, this wasn't excessive force in order to find them not guilty. All right? What you didn't hear from the defense in their opening statement are the 3 instances when a person can't claim self-defense under the law in Georgia. Can't be the initial unjustified aggressor. This is important. You can't start it with your driveway decision, unjustified, because you didn't see a crime committed that day, and then claim, oh, I acted in self-defense. What's their justification? What are you going to hear? We wanted Ahmaud Arbery to stop and talk to us, and he wouldn't. So we tried to force him to stop, and then we killed him. I mean, that's really what they're going to get up here and tell you. They'll probably make it seem much more palatable and okay, but that's really what they're going to tell you. You can't commit felonies against someone and then claim self-defense. You can't be the armed robber in the convenience store pointing the gun, and when the clerk goes to defend himself by grabbing that gun or hitting the armed robber, you can't shoot him. The law goes not self-defense when you're committing felonies against someone. And you can't provoke someone into defending themselves against you so that you can intentionally harm them and then claim self-defense. Okay, what's that about, ladies and gentlemen? Think of your schoolyard bullies. Think of the 3 boys walking behind the one who's the target, kid who's getting abused, right? Okay, so you got 3 on 1. They're going down the hallway. They're menacing him, maybe threatening him, and they get him up against a locker, and he has nowhere to go. He's trapped, right? So what does the kid who's being bullied do? He takes it, and he takes it, and takes it until he can't anymore, and he finally shoves the one bully, and what does that bully do? Bam! Punches the target child, right? What's the bully always say? He started it. Isn't that what the bully always says? He pushed me. I was defending myself. Yeah, 3 on 1 with one kid up against a locker. You're bullying him. And he actually pushes you, and you get to then claim you were acting in self-defense when you punch him? Guess what? The law knows people do this. I mean, you get this. This is the law. The law knows people will goad other people into defending themselves so that they can claim, I was acting in self-defense. You can't do that either. 3 on 1, 2 pickup trucks, 2 guns, unarmed. Mr. Arbery was unarmed. So what are you going to hear? I don't know what they're going to say. They're good. They're good defense attorneys. They're going to get up here, and the state is so worried that they're going to make it seem so reasonable that everything Travis did and Greg did is just so reasonable. I'm just going to ask you, use your common sense and put your thinking caps on. But this is what I anticipate, what we anticipate they're going to say. The victim started it, or you're going to hear that he was the aggressor, okay, because he was running towards Travis McMichael, but he was running away from Mr. Bryan, who'd already tried to hit him with the pickup truck.
I don't know what the defense can say, but I got to hear
this. He was
this.
trapped like a rat. He knew there was nowhere else to go. Out there trying to do this, right?
I'm pretty sure they're about to go into break.
Situations when the crime really happens right in front of you, and you can take action right then and there to arrest somebody because you know about it. You've seen it. You're taking action right then and there. If it's a felony, you can run after the person and chase them down. That's all this means. This was not a citizen's arrest. They never said it. None of the defendants saw Mr. Arbery commit any crime that day. They were detaining him for the police so that they could investigate and find the crime that he must have committed that day, because what is he? He's running down the street. That's not the law, ladies and gentlemen. Not the law at all.
Oh, wait. Greg McMichael. This guy break into the house today? His answer was, that's just it, I don't know. That's what I was told. What's your name out there? I said, listen, you might want to go knock on doors. There are doors down there because this guy just done something because he was fleeing from, I don't know, he might have gone in somebody's house.
Travis McMichael, remember all his assumptions? He got up here and I wrote them all down. He may have run by. Matt Albenzi may have seen him. He may have broken in. Maybe the owner's down there. He may have been caught. He may be trying to avoid the police. That's testimony from the witness stand. He didn't know anything. Absolutely nothing. So, where are we going to end up? This is where we're going to end up. Travis McMichael had probable cause to believe that Ahmaud stole the stuff off the English boat in 2019 because his mother gave him some gossip about stuff being stolen, and he was escaping. Use your common sense. How do you escape from a crime on an unknown date in 2019 on February 23rd, 2020? I'm sure they'll explain it to you. But use your common sense. And remember, what do you think? You think all this was completely made up for trial? Especially given no one ever said it on February 23rd, 2020? Ladies and gentlemen, use your common sense. Put your critical thinking caps on. It's all the state can ask you to do. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the defense.
Ooh. Okay.
The entrance to Satilla Shores, and then there's a photograph of like U.S. Marine or the U.S. Coast Guard symbol, which is what I quickly saw. So right now, Your Honor, I don't know what Mr. Sheffield's putting up, but I have grave concerns that he's about to show the jury a whole bunch of stuff that they have never seen and no one's authenticated or testified to in this trial at all.
These are demonstrative things, Judge. This is closing argument. We've got a lot of testimony about the Law Enforcement Training Center. That's all that is. We've had testimony about his training, and we've had testimony about use of force. These are just demonstrative. These are just demonstrative things, not in evidence. I mean, they're in evidence to the extent they've been testified about.
The only thing that caught my eye there is the argument that this is what he received as part of it, is what he testified to.
Right. Yeah, these are just demonstrative.
And there's
visuals.
nothing on those that show the Coast Guard manual or anything like that that would be, for example, I know that the state presented a few of the pages from the actual manuals themselves.
Nothing from the manual. The only thing that I have is what I've created that shows he testified about officer presence, verbal commands, control techniques, aggressive response techniques, intermediate weapons, and weapons protection.
Okay. And this, what is that? Is that something you put together, or is that actually come
Yeah,
from his records?
I've clipped it and cut it from things that I found.
Well, what's behind it is an orange thing that has physical fitness standards and search incident to arrest behind it. So, and it says objectives completed. Travis McMichael never testified to any of those things.
Testified to his training and that he did these things.
And what's the thing at the top, Your Honor? We have Maritime Law Enforcement Academy Student Profile Report. That wasn't tendered in, and then we've got that next to it.
Well,
for official use only?
yeah, I just intend to talk about the course that he took, the courses that he took that he testified to.
No, there's more to it. I mean, that says it's a student profile report. That was not testified to. That was not tendered in. Lost it. Yeah, I don't have any problem with an argument about what he testified to, but once we start getting into what the curriculum was or an individual report,
All right, how's that?
that works a lot.
Okay. Then I just
better.
have this.
Can you go back to
Oh, sure.
I'm just digesting.
heartache and tragedy. This case is about three things. It's about watching, it's about waiting, it's about believing. Travis McMichael spent almost a decade of his life learning about duty and responsibility. He received extensive training on how to make decisions that would ultimately impact his beliefs as a petty officer in the Coast Guard, as a boarding officer in the Coast Guard, into some of the most treacherous waters extending some 200 miles off the coast in the United States. He trained relentlessly about his duty and his responsibility. Even after active service and then coming into smaller communities and working in the Coast Guard, he trained weekly, sometimes daily, on what the law provided that he do, what his responsibilities were, how he would make decisions in critical moments of policing and in critical moments of rescue. These teachings were burned within his brain to the point of muscle memory so that he could perform his duty and his responsibility to his country and his community. He talked to you about officer presence and how he trained for officer presence. He talked with you about verbal commands and how he would use verbal commands to try to police or to try to calm or to try to de-escalate situations. He talked with you about control techniques and the things that he would have to use to get control from those persons who he was investigating. Aggressive response techniques, something that he never had to use on his job, but something that he trained weekly, every Friday with the red man suit. And he talked with you also about intermediate weapons, weapons retention, and the use of deadly force. Travis spent a long time going through these things in his testimony. If you recall, I was writing feverishly as he was testifying so that I could capture what it was that he had to share with us about these things. And it includes what gave him the right to search, examine, arrest, seize, inspect, inquire. He talked with you about the level of suspicion by a reasonable and prudent person given the overall circumstances to believe that crime has been committed. Probable cause.
Whoa, what?
He spoke with you, crime has been committed. A reasonable and prudent person. He talked with you about the level of suspicion by a reasonable and prudent person given the overall circumstances to believe that crime has been committed. Probable cause.
That's not probable cause. He basically said someone told him a rumor about stuff going down, and so when he saw him, they gave him. Yeah, that's not.
He spoke with you about the use of force continuum. He talked with you about de-escalation and how de-escalation was always the goal. He talked with you about leaps, listen, empathize, ask questions, paraphrase, summarize. Why? So that you could gain understanding, so that you could continue to investigate, de-escalate, learn what's going on, and figure it out. And he talked also about weapon retention and using a weapon, if it had to come to that, to de-escalate a situation. When Travis moved back home to Satilla Shores, he did so with his 3-year-old son, Everett. He moved in with his mother and his father, and then eventually his sister joined them in the home. You've heard about Satilla Shores from several witnesses who came to talk to you about what they were experiencing in this once idyllic neighborhood. A neighborhood that was once a place where elderly would walk at night, kids would play after dark. But over time, how that began to lessen. And Travis began to notice it, among others, about how things in the neighborhood started to change. From learning that the GBI went around, to learning that Officer Rash went around, to what was being posted on Facebook, to hearing from witnesses on the stand, to hearing Rash talk about driving through the neighborhood, witnesses talking about police cars going through the neighborhood at night, shining flashlights. This neighborhood was being covered in suspicious persons, in extra watches, in neighborhood patrols, in concerned citizens. It was everywhere. It was on Facebook. An account created so neighbors could help each other. And the types of things that these neighbors would talk about to each other was about the crime that was being committed to them, to their neighbors, crime that they had seen happening across the street from them, crime that some was reported but not all. You heard a lot of people talk about, I didn't call the police because what's the point? Crime is over and the people are gone. But they told you that what was happening in their neighborhood scared them. It caused them concern. It was unsettling to imagine people lurking and sneaking around your property at night so that your cameras are going off. Your doorbell camera's going off.
Arbery got shot during the day.
One of our witnesses testified about how emotional she got because she had to tell her children, you can't go out at night anymore. And the steps that they took to protect each other, using Facebook, hey, be on the lookout. You heard Cindy Clark testify about how she offered to go get license plates on 2 separate occasions for cars coming in the neighborhood. Or how she called the police on a bunch of people that were walking into the neighborhood after their car had supposedly broken down, but it was really stolen. These are real experiences of real people who were very scared. And so they took it upon themselves to do something about it. Got cameras, call the police, notify each other, citizens watch, neighborhood watch. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Even Travis himself had taken it upon himself to try to investigate one particular person that had been identified as possibly being homeless and living under the bridge. Travis explained to you that he had learned about a neighbor having her purse stolen. Of course, there were other complaints of crime in the neighborhood as well, and he thought, after boating home one afternoon and seeing what he thought was a homeless encampment under the bridge, that this could be the guy. So he finished going home. He got his dad, who is a lifetime law enforcement officer and investigator, and they went over and they drove and they walked down under the bridge. And instantly, when Travis did this, you saw evidence of his muscle memory. He talked about walking down, not holding a weapon out, not armed with the gun out. He had his gun with him just in case he needed it for protection. But he walked down to do what? Use leaps, to listen, to have a conversation. And as he walked down under the bridge, he saw a bunch of trash and a bunch of items and a machete and a man fishing. So he followed his training. He politely stepped in between the machete and the man. He said, hey, bud, you living down here? Everything okay? As he's doing that, he's looking around, looking to see if that purse is there. He's looking to see if any of those other stolen items may be there. The man responded, no, just fishing. When they left, they called the police. You have evidence of that. You heard Greg McMichael on the call with the police, non-emergency line, just saying, hey, we want y'all to go check out this guy under the bridge that we've called you about. State asked Travis, well, why don't you describe this fella for us? White, black, Asian, Hispanic. The white guy. Called the police. He was gone by the time the police got there, and that was the end of it. But the man under the bridge, or the idea that there could be a man living under the bridge, did not go away. That theme and that person comes back during 2019. The real problem, as the neighbors in neighborhood of Satilla Shores were trying to figure out what was going on and who may be responsible for it, was that 220 Satilla Drive residents, a residence that had a unique type of crime going on in it, one much different from what they had been experiencing. So dark you can't even see the photograph of it. But it was the photograph of 220 Satilla Shores at night, along with the dock down by the water at night. And what all of these neighbors are going to soon become aware of is that there is a repeat offender who is coming at a time when he has absolutely no lawful reason for being there. Just to start with, on October 25th, Larry English calls the police. And we learn from Larry English that there is a man plundering around. Larry English at this time only has 2 cameras, one on the dock and one behind the house looking out in the backyard of the house. Larry English says he looks drunk or on drugs. That's concerning. Larry English identifies to the police, I have a lot of valuables in my house. Tools, equipment, things of that nature. Never seen this gentleman before, and it doesn't look good. Police come, but there is no person that is found. What you need to understand about burglary is burglary includes any house, building, or structure which is designed or intended for occupancy for residential use. This unoccupied, unsecure construction site, which could be anything, is not the same thing as Larry English's residence that's being built.
So you basically just said
That's a term that the state continues to use, the unoccupied, unsecured construction site, which doesn't even begin to tell the story of what this is. On 11/17,
there's no burglarizing going on. It's just a
2
construction
people are seen
site.
on the video. It's a white couple that goes in and comes out. What's significant about Larry English's report, though, on 11/17, is not that the 2 people that I saw on the video tonight have stolen something. He says, we had stuff stolen about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. He's now telling the police he had stuff stolen from his home. The next night, Mr. Arbery returns. At night, pitch black dark, no lights on in the house whatsoever. And this time, Larry English has put cameras inside the residence. Now, he sees and reports that Mr. Arbery is looking inside a boat. The same boat? No. No, that boat, he got there on the morning of the 18th, and he took it back to Douglas, Georgia with him. That's what he says right there at the bottom. Brought the boat back to keep from stealing electronics off of it. He is communicating this to 911. This is official. He is reporting again. We had a situation with the same guy a week and a half ago. Says it right there. He was on about 3 people's cameras. And just to emphasize, on 12/1/19, English calls the police again. He talks about somebody might be living under the bridge. That idea is still floating out there, still considering it. But again, he says, I had a bunch of stuff stolen out of the boat, which again confirms what we're talking about. And on 2 of these occasions, we have video of Mr. Arbery inside the residence. The first on the dock, and the second inside the house looking into the boat. The video ends right there. Travis McMichael has his own horrifying experience with a man that he is about to learn has just been involved in all this stuff with Larry English. He's been told some things by his mother and his father and other neighbors before this moment, but he's going to learn some things for himself on 2/11/20. On this night, Travis is driving out of the neighborhood to go get some gas. He wants to fill up so he doesn't have to get up 4 a.m. and do it. And on his way out, as he's driving down the road out of the neighborhood, he sees a man run across the street and then duck into the shadows. From this house, ducking through the shadows, through the trees, all the way across until he gets in front of this house. Travis backs his car up and splashes his headlights up on the house. The gentleman steps behind a porta potty. Travis then starts to get out because he wants to say, hey, what are you doing here? The guy comes out from behind a porta potty, lifts his shirt up, and acts like he's reaching in his pocket, and that totally freaks out Travis. Despite his training, despite his experience, it freaks him out. Travis tries to talk to him. Now, the guy never says, hey, I'm sorry, I am so sorry. I was walking my dog, or I'm so sorry, I did not mean to startle you, like any one of you would if you were out in the yard late at night. Didn't say anything, just did this. Travis got in his car, reversed out, stalled the car, but backed up and zipped home to tell his dad. As soon as his dad hears what's going on, his dad decides to go check it out. At the same time, Diego Perez has apparently been called, and he's going to check it out. They take firearms with them. Travis tells you, he said, Dad, whoa, wait a second. This guy could be armed. Wait a second. But his dad is already walking down the street. Travis gets in his truck. He backs up. He's calling 911, and he returns to the house where he puts the headlights on the house, watching, waiting, believing that this man could be dangerous, believing that his dad could now be in danger, believing that something awful could happen. So he posts up right here, lights on, and waits for the police that he himself called. And when the police arrive, he stands there and he talks to the police. And he tells them, hey, my dad's in there. Travis, why didn't you go in there? Why didn't you go in the house? He's like, I'm not going in there. I'm not going in there. When this guy did this, that was enough for me. I'm staying out here. It's a reasonable thing to do. Ultimately, Travis calls police, and we hear what he tells police instantly on the phone. We've had a string of burglaries, a lot of burglaries and break-ins. That's what he tells them. That's what's in his mind almost from the very beginning. He startled me. He reached into his pocket. I didn't know if he was armed or not. It looked like he was acting he was. He's sneaking behind a bush. He also tells the officer he had a pistol stolen about a month ago. This is what he's saying, and you hear him breathing. He's And the operator says, "You all right, hon?" "Yeah, he just startled me." That's real. That's a real experience with the guy going into a house after being seen at night with headlights and reaching and then turning around and going into a house that's not his. Where is the logic in that? And Travis then stays, talks with the officer, and then sees the video and sees this gentleman just walking around the house like he didn't just get stopped, caught, and seen and have this interaction with Travis like it never happened. He's just walking around the house very calmly. And Travis feels that that is so bold and brazen to do that. It frightens him about this guy. It worries him about this guy. That's real. It's what happened. What happens next is the two officers show up, and being told what they've been told, that the guy acted like he had a gun and that he went into the house, they pull out their firearms and start going through the house, looking and shouting and calling with their guns out because they might need to protect themselves. Are they committing an aggravated assault when they do this? Are they committing a false imprisonment when they do this? No, they're searching, looking, and trying to apprehend whoever's in the house who may be armed. And then everybody meets outside and they talk. And this is where Travis gets the rest of the information. Aside from his own personal experience, he and his father talking to Officer Rash, Diego Perez, Matt Albenzi, Ronnie Olson, and Brandon Gregory, the officer who also works with Glenn County Police. They talk that night. And they talk about what's been going on. And Travis gets to see the rest of the video, and he's like, yep, this guy is that guy. It's all the same guy. Been break-ins, been a lot of burglaries going on. He knows that stuff's been stolen already. And they have a conversation, and you heard part of that conversation from the transcript. Rash says, well, we haven't actually seen him take it. It's because there was no camera on it. But I guarantee you, if one of you left your bag in this room and we all went out into the hallway, and then I walked in here and you saw me walk in here and you never saw me leave, and when you come back in, you walk in, you go, where's my bag? Well, nobody else came in here, but Jason did, and the bag is gone, and oh, look, there's a back door. Is it reasonable to believe that I may have taken your bag? Of course it is. This is a burglary. He says, haven't seen him actually take anything? Yeah, criminal trespassing, officer arrested. Yeah, at the very least. Travis is thinking about Ahmaud Arbery. He's thinking about what must be in his mind in order for himself to try to figure some things out. Travis knows that he caught Ahmaud going into the house. He knows that. And so Ahmaud should know that Travis knows that. He knows that Ahmaud has been down on the dock, and that Ahmaud should know he's been down on the dock, that he's been on someone else's property. He's got to know that by now, Travis is thinking. He knows it's not his home or his house under construction. He knows that he's been caught sneaking around the bushes. Travis is the one that caught him. He knows that there's been a confrontation about that. He knows, he believes Mr. Arbery's got to be, this guy, this man has to understand that these things have taken place, that he had headlights on him, that somebody was trying to talk to him about why he was out after dark in front of this house and he didn't respond. If I say to one of you, hey, how are you doing? And you just look at me and you walk away, you know you've looked at me and walked away. You know that that's part of what's happened. And he still went in the house after being confronted in the dark. And then he looked around. He knows that he's in the house looking around. And eventually, that he'll be seen on the 23rd going in the house, and that people were trying to talk to him and that he's not answering anybody any questions. And ultimately, he knows that the police are on the way. Travis knows these things must be in Mr. Arbery's mind because they were part of the very real experience that he had with him. And because of that, Travis is starting to believe and expect certain things in return. Obvious, ordinary, natural things that should happen in return. To constitute the offense of burglary, it's not necessary that a break-in happen, that something gets broken. If you recall, all the questions by the state of the witnesses, well, was anything broken? Was a window broken? Was a door broken? That's not what's required for the law. Those questions are meaningless and they are red herrings. Nothing has to be broken. You just have to break the plane of the structure to constitute a burglary. Then, you don't have to show that an actual theft had been committed. Nothing actually has to be stolen. You just have to enter with the intent to steal something. Where do we derive a person's intent to steal something from a house? Well, they certainly go into a house that isn't theirs, that contains valuables, and they do it at a time when they shouldn't be doing it, and under circumstances that are very problematic, including running from other people who see you. Lastly, Larry English's deposition. Mr. English couldn't be here, he's very sick. Watching a lot of deposition is a hard thing to do. The basics of this deposition. You made your neighbors aware, the ones that we've mentioned, Al Benzie, Greg, Ronnie Olson, you made these guys aware that you had stuff stolen out of your boat. Yes, and in fact, you wanted your neighbors to help you catch the guy. Yes, Diego. I wanted Diego to catch this guy. You never told them at any point, hey guys, I'm sorry, it wasn't stolen when it was at my house. It was stolen when it was off property. You never told them that, did you, Mr. English? Never told them that. You never announced it on Facebook. You never announced it on Next Door Neighbor. You never corrected what you now say is it was stolen off-site somewhere. You never told your neighbors that. He says no. So then, therefore, Mr. English, to your knowledge, they were left with the impression that stuff had been stolen from your boat at 220 Satilla. I guess so. What was Ahmaud Arbery doing in Satilla Shores from October 2019 to February 2020? There is no evidence that Ahmaud Arbery ever jogged or exercised in Satilla Shores. Not one friend, not one family member, not one eyewitness, even Rash going door to door. There is no evidence whatsoever that Satilla Shores was a place of exercise and jogging for Ahmaud Arbery. Officer Rash testified that by December 19, he knew Larry had a cooler stolen, electronic equipment stolen from the offshore boat while it was parked in the RV garage. And Bob said, that's a burglary. A burglary had been committed in this residence. And he said, that's right. But it was never reported. Like, we didn't have a report about it, so I didn't really investigate it. But that is a burglary, and he has admitted that to you as well. February 23rd. Mr. Olson's surveillance camera shows that Mr. Arbery walked into the neighborhood. Didn't run. He then stood in the yard and put his hands on his hips, looked around like this, and then went into the residence. Matt Albenzi was doing work in his yard, and he saw this gentleman who resembled the gentleman who had committed what they thought was a burglary in that residence. He shut down the work that he was doing, put a gun in his pocket, grabbed his cell phone, and he walked all the way up the street to the corner where Jones meets Satilla, where he keeps his mailbox. And he stood there right next to this tree, and he called 911. At some point in the video, when you see Mr. Arbery run out, you'll see he passes right through the window. And Mr. Albenzi is standing right there on the phone calling the police. His behavior then changes. Instantly, Mr. Arbery is at a full sprint, running into the neighborhood. Running into the neighborhood, which the state is going to infer means he's going on his regular job. But no, because running out of the neighborhood is a problem. It's a problem now because there's a guy standing there on the phone looking at you back in the same residence that you've been caught in now 3 times. Caught meaning on camera, and police coming and searching with lights, and Travis McMichael, and to return to that house in the middle of the day like that after being run off. Imagine going to visit a house under normal circumstances. Oh, this house looks like one we might want to buy. I'm going to go in there. Then somebody comes up to you with headlights and tries to stop you from going into the house and confronts you about it. Are you literally ever going to go back to that house again? It is unreasonable to think that he's going back there for some lawful purpose after being run out of there 3 times before. So he doesn't run out of either of the entrances to go back across the street where he lives. He runs deep into the neighborhood. Someone has called the police.
Deep into the neighborhood.
Now, Travis has told you nothing has erased from his mind about this individual in the 2 weeks between February 11th and February 23rd.
Everyone,
It's all still there. And while he's
leave a like on the video and leave a sub too. Appreciate you guys watching.
breaking in down the street is back, he's running past. Get your gun. Travis and his dad carry their firearms for protection wherever they go. That's what they do. The law allows them to do it. They have permits to do it. Travis testified he had a concealed permit at one point. The law allows this behavior. Travis comes out to the street. He looks down the street, right across. Here he is at 2:30. He comes out here. Mr. Arbery has already run past. He comes out here. He looks down the street from where the house is and sees Mr. Matt Albenzi, who is walking towards him, and eventually, after a couple houses, goes like this and points down the street. It is reasonable to conclude that based on what his dad said, who just came running in the house, the guy's back who's broken in, to come outside and look and see Mr. Albenzi, who he knows, who he's talked with, who he shared thoughts and feelings about the person breaking in the house, is now saying, go that way. The guy is back. To get in his car and go. You cannot act on the unsupported statements of others. The state has characterized that, which is an accurate statement of the law, as Travis's mom. Are you kidding? After all that we have seen, after all that he has experienced, after all the conversation that he's had, after all the videos that he's seen, after what he experienced himself, that he's just going off of what his mommy told him? This is what the state wants you to do something about. This is what they're trying to inject into this case, knowing, despite that Travis has called the police on the white man under the bridge, knowing that Travis called the police on a carjacker or told his police friends when he was in the Coast Guard and a report was made about the white guy that tried to rob his truck, knowing that Travis called the police about his gun being stolen and readily admits, I don't know who stole it, knowing that Travis called the police on the 11th of February. They want to try to reduce this case down to this statement, which is not true. Travis had all of this. His reading Facebook, everything going on at Larry English's house, knowing about what was happening in Satilla Shores, speaking with everybody on the 11th, his own experience, Albenzi signaling, Officer Rash and Matt Albenzi. This is what he carried with him when he left his driveway that day. Reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Facts and circumstances to warrant a prudent person, one taking care to understand the truth, in believing that the suspect has committed the offense of burglary. Travis believes he's committed the offense of burglary. The facts necessary to establish probable cause for arrest are less than those required to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's more than suspicion or possibility. It's got to be a probability, probably. And he said, I had a probability. There was a probability that this was the guy who did it, and here's why I think he did it. And I wrote down every one of the things that we talked about as he testified. I wrote them all down, and they are all encapsulated in that slide I just told you. This is where the duty and responsibility in following the law becomes intertwined with heartache and tragedy. Because you do have the right to perform a citizen's arrest. You do have the right to have a firearm when you make an arrest. You do have the right to stop a person and to hold them and detain them for the police. And there is risk with that. And there are tragic consequences that can come from that. And we can all sit here right now and say what the state has said from the very beginning and what Travis himself recognizes. If he had only stayed home that day, if he had just sat on the couch and fallen asleep with his kid that day, Travis told you it's not a day that doesn't go by that he doesn't think that exact same thing. But the law allows the citizens to make a citizen's arrest. And if doing so properly, it is the reason for the actions that follow. Here, you talk about an offense being committed in his presence or when his immediate knowledge. What could be more immediate than February 11th? What could be more immediate than seeing the videos of him in the house and talking with police officers and other people, including hearing from Larry English through others, that he actually had stuff stolen from his property? An offense has been committed, and he knows about it. He's seen everything other than the hand on the equipment that was stolen. If it's a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, then you can arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion, probable cause. Travis said many, many times it was the totality of the circumstances. That's his Coast Guard brain. That's his Coast Guard brain saying everything that I knew gave me the belief that a crime had been committed. Escape. Private citizen's warrant arrest must occur immediately after the perpetration of the offense, or, in the case of felonies, during escape. Not every person is arrested at the moment they commit a crime. Not every person is arrested by police, because sometimes the police don't get there in time. But if they learn about the person and they have information about the person, escape can happen anytime. Escape can happen later. It doesn't have to happen right at the same time the crime is committed. There's no law that says that. There's no time limit imposed. The police would never be able to arrest anybody. And a citizen is in the same shoes as an officer when it comes to citizen's arrest. So, Travis, leaving his house, decides he's going to follow. That's what he does. He pulls out after his dad crammed into the front seat with the kid seat there, and he follows. And he watches. And he pulls up next to this gentleman. No gun is raised. No violence is ensued. He doesn't get out of the car. He doesn't tackle him. He doesn't do anything. He does what a reasonably prudent person would do. He does what his training has taught him to do, to use leaps. And he says, hey, man, what's going on? Can you stop for a second, please? I just want to talk to you for a second. There is no violence. If Travis wanted violence against this man, if Travis wanted to hurt him or commit an aggravated assault or commit a false imprisonment, he could have done it right then and there. He doesn't. He talks to him. Mr. Arbery looks him in the eyes, doesn't say a word, doesn't have to, but that's information for Travis. Is it so offensive to pull up next to somebody and say, hey man, can you stop for a second? I want to talk to you. Just for a minute. Hold on a second. Is
Yeah,
that
but
so
if they
offensive?
don't, you can't keep chasing them.
So he stops. He starts to go back one way. Travis backs up alongside of him, 3 feet away, not pulling in front of him, not pulling behind him, just tries to talk to him. And Mr. Arbery takes off running down the street. And Travis watches him. There he goes. Doesn't take a gun out and shoot him in the back. Doesn't take a gun out and commit an aggravated assault. Doesn't take a gun and try to kill him. Doesn't try to hit him with his truck. He watches him. Watching. So he pulls up next to him. And he stops again. He says, hey, hold on a second. We just want to talk to you for a minute. Something's going on back there. We want to know what's going on. He's not saying to the guy, I don't know what's been going on in this neighborhood. To do that would do what? It would escalate the situation. So he just says, we want to know what's going on back there. Why is that guy pointing at you? Why is he doing that? Mr. Arbery stops. He looks him dead in the eyes, doesn't say a word, and Travis just says, we want you to stay right here. We're calling the cops. Call the cops. Call the cops. And Mr. Arbery bolts. Now, on the subject of police, Travis told you. Got in the car with my dad. I said, Dad, are the cops coming? Yeah, go this way, go this way. It's very clear. He says he asked his father about the cops being called. They call the cops all the time. This is not like it's a new thing for the McMichaels to call the police. Here, when they say call the cops, now he bolts. And it's on that bolting that Travis thinks this guy knows he's caught. He knows he's caught because he's bolting. He's looked at me. He won't talk to me. That's odd. I'm not talking to him in a too aggressive of a way, and he bolts. And Travis stays right where he is. And he watches. He watches what happens between this truck. He has no clue who this black truck is. In terms of evidence, there is no evidence of any communication between these people, any cooperation between these two people, no help, no assistant, no encouraging, nothing. So he sees this truck and he tells you it's one of a couple things. It's either the guy from up at 220, or it's his buddy, maybe trying to give him a lift, or now that I'm watching him, he's being very aggressive against this truck. He's watching it from 200 feet away, but he's thinking this guy's being really aggressive. There's something off with this guy. His dad says, Travis, go. Dad gets out of the car, climbs in the back of the truck with his rebuilt hip and his medical issues. Travis watches him get in, looks down the street, sees this, takes his gun off the floorboard, puts it up on the bench seat. His dad says, go, get down the street. Travis says, no, I'm not going back that way. Something's off with this guy. I'm not going into that. Well, if he wanted to go commit an aggravated assault, if he wanted to go do a false imprisonment, if he wanted to end the life of somebody, whether it's murder or felony murder, there's another chance. But he doesn't. He just watches. And then he says, I'm going to drive around. The judge is going to charge you on hijacking a motor vehicle. A person commits the crime of hijacking a motor vehicle in the second degree when such person obtains a motor vehicle from an individual without his or her consent. Travis is watching This gentleman tried to get in the car in an aggressive way, and he thinks that does not look good. Whether he thinks to himself that's a hijacking or not, it doesn't look good. It looks dangerous. Travis also told you that when he came face to face with Ms. Arbery, even though he didn't speak, he looked very angry, he looked very upset, clenching his teeth, but not saying a word. And these are the notes I took about it, right in front of you guys. Just wrote it down as he was talking. Stop, please stop. Mad, clenched teeth. It was very unexpected. What's going on? I want to talk to you. What's going on? Police are on the way. And then his dad says, go back. He says, I am not going back there. I'll go from Beaufort around to Holmes. And that's what he does. He drives around. Now, his dad's in the back of the truck. His dad is old and infirm. He's sitting on this bench in the back of the truck. Travis says he's going with his foot on the brake pretty much 3 or 4 miles an hour. Drives all the way around thinking, I'm not going to go back into this mess down here. I'll drive around. And when he drives around, you've now learned about this dog leg. That black line essentially is the dog leg. You can't see past it. Travis tells you the first thing he sees is Mr. Arbery doing a U-turn right there at the crest of that turn. What does he do? He watches. Does he drive at him? No. Does he try to tackle him? No. Does he try to put a shotgun at him? No. Does he yell at him? No. He's trying to continue to assess the situation in a reasonable, prudent fashion. Then he drives across the dog leg, comes all the way to the end of the street, and he sees Mr. Arbery again with this truck. Again, with this truck, tangled up with this truck. And what looks like, again, aggression at the truck. So Travis stops. He stops. He's thinking to himself, why is this guy not running through this open yard? This is Satilla right here. This is Holmes. This is where he sees the truck. What is with it that this guy's not going this way? And who is that truck? What is happening? Instead, they both run around Travis, back up around the dog leg. So Travis says, okay, I'm watching, I'm looking, I'm going to pull forward, stop in my car at the end of the street, and I'm just going to take up a spot right here. I'm going to take up a spot here. I know that he's currently not over here. I know he's not behind me. I can see my house right there. I can see up Satilla Drive, and I'm looking up Holmes. I'm just going to take up residence right here, and I'm going to watch to see what happens next. Because maybe this guy will come back, and we can stop him, or maybe he'll just keep running that way. Maybe he'll keep running that way, and I can tell the police, I'm pretty sure he's not this way, pretty sure he's not over here, he's not there, he's headed that way. What he doesn't know is that Mr. Arbery is turning around up on the other side of the dog leg, and this is where our video picks up with Roddy Bryant. By now, it should be clear. Travis doesn't even know where Roddy Bryant is. To say that Roddy Bryant's turn up there and
Oops, my fault.
And to follow him back, Travis has no idea what's happening behind the blind side of that curve. And still doesn't know who this truck is and why this gentleman is interacting with it in the way that he is. But this is what's happening unbeknownst to Travis. Mr. Arbery turns around, and you get a quick glimpse of what's up the street, and it isn't Travis McMichael's truck. It isn't there. It's because it's all the way back down Holmes near Satilla. The state is going to play the recording that you've heard of Mr. Bryant turning and driving and revving and doing all this stuff. This will be the third interaction that Mr. Arbery will have coming at this truck. And Mr. Bryant is freaked out, to say the least. So freaked out, he drops his phone. This is where the phone drops and goes pitch black for about a minute. And in this time, you'll hear sounds. You'll hear engine noise. You'll hear turning. You'll hear shifting. You'll hear seat belts clanking. You'll hear the three-point turn eventually. He says, well, you know what? I'm going to head back that way. But what you don't hear on that phone, even after audio enhancement, even after any kind of working with audio specialists and digital specialists, you'll never, ever hear any yelling and no communication between Travis or Greg. The state wants you to think that it's at this moment Greg McMichael drives by and says, "I'm going to blow your GD head off." Well, if he said it, you'd have heard it. It'd been on that telephone and they'd have played it for you. It ain't there. So, Roddy Bryan is all the way up. This blue mailbox down here, a little closer up picture, is where Mr. Arbery turns around. This is the demonstration video with Seacrest, and this is Mr. Bryan's actual video. This is how far up the road he is. This is the minute that he's been with his phone down on the floor. And in this minute, 2 times Mr. Arbery is going to run towards Travis. First time, turn around and go back. And the second time, he'll turn around and go back. And that's where that video will pick him up, on the second time. So the first time, Ahmaud Arbery comes across that dog leg. He's coming at Travis. At this moment, he's looking into Travis's eyes, and he's coming at him, and ultimately is going to get within 10 feet of him running while Travis is saying, "Stop, do not come any closer, stop right there, stop." No gun in his hand, just saying, "Stop, do not come any closer." Now at this moment, Travis has already had his experience, obviously, where he reached for the gun before, where he was acting bold. He's not going to forget that. He's not going to forget that he just saw what looked like attacking this truck, acting violent, being bold. And none of what he experienced that day will be forgotten. Trying to talk to him. "We want to talk to you. What's going on? We've called the police." And noting that he's not acting right, something is off, and Dad saying, "Go back there," and he said, "No way, I'm not going back to that." But now, he's running at Travis. We have proof that he was on that truck because his palm print is right there, and it's consistent with a right thumbprint right there. That's just one piece of proof that his hands were on the door that supports Travis's belief that he was trying to get into that truck. And here he comes. And Travis finally takes a stand and says, "Do not come any closer to me." Ultimately, Travis, when he gets about 10 feet, reaches into the truck like this, and that's what causes Mr. Arbery to turn. And he runs all the way back. Travis testified, "I ran to him for about 10 yards. I don't know, because my main concern is this guy's got a gun. I'm trying to avoid the whole situation from happening." So he watches him. There's 2 options here. There's watching him until the police arrive and giving directions, and there's also stopping him. But he's not going to chase him to stop him. But he is going to try to stop him and detain him, especially when he's coming at him. So he watches, again, taking up, looking out, trying to be ready. And by the way, where are the police? Where are they? They should be here by now. That's what he says to his dad. "Where the heck are the police? Did you call the police?" "No, I don't have my cell phone on me." It's like, what? Dad. God. Dials the number, gives it, listens, gives it to him. Again, it's what they do. They call the police. And now Ahmaud is coming back for the second time. Travis felt, and it was through rehabilitation on redirect examination that we learned during his interview with Nohilly, he was telling Nohilly the same things. There's something not there. This gentleman is not connecting it up. Something's not right. I'm telling him to quit, stop coming at me. I see where it's going. The second time around, I see where this is going. And by the way he was acting prior to, I don't know if he had a weapon on him. An aggravated assault, by the way, is a felony that can be committed by the use of fists. The threat of the use of a dangerous object or weapon. The threat of it.
Oh, wait a second. He's saying, bro, like that's what the whole prosecutor or the state's argument was. can't bring a gun to a fist fight. But this man saying, no, aggravated assault can be used by fist, and the threat of his fist allowed him to just shoot him?
Fists to create serious bodily injury. Fists are that weapon.
Oh, wow.
And right now, as Ahmaud Arbery is running toward Travis McMichael,
He's justifying bringing a gun to a fist fight.
he could have a gun, and he definitely has fists. And he's coming straight at him after being told the first time to stop and turn around, and didn't do it until Travis had to reach inside his car. That has now put him on alert. The second time that Mr. Arbery comes down the street, Travis says he gets 30 to 40 feet from him. He's afraid that he will be on him in a matter of seconds. He is afraid that he will beat him with his fist or whatever weapon he might have. And he's scared. And so he's done what he thinks the law allows him to do, which is to try to de-escalate that approach by showing force. Showing force necessary to prevent Travis himself or his father from getting beaten and possibly killed. And so he raises the gun. And he does it to protect himself. To protect himself. They call it the 21-foot rule. So he was a little early. He was at 30 to 40. But he did it because he was afraid. And what happens is it causes a reaction from Ahmaud. He changes from the left side of the road to the right. But then
It's a little early.
he starts coming back at Travis across.
To break rules
the
when
road
he feels
again.
like it.
And then gets even closer. He starts on the left. It causes him to change, but then he comes back again. Once the gun is down, he comes back again and changes to the left side of the road, and now we see him going back over toward the right. Now, Travis, this is his truck looking down on it. Travis is here, originally in the door jamb, but he told you, as Mr. Arbery came closer, he did this. It made him change direction. Now he's coming. He's wavering on the road. And so Travis is walking away. He's backing up. He's not charging at him. He's backing up to try to create space and distance. He has this gun here, and he is literally watching him. We see his foot plant right there, and Travis is thinking to himself, please turn, please turn, please turn. That's what he told y'all. That's what he told Nohilly. Please turn into this yard. Please don't come at me. I am backing up. I'm just trying to keep an eye to make sure please don't come at me. And as he comes around to the far side of the truck, he can't see him. He's backed up over here, but so he's stepped up over here to try to get a look at what's happening because he's afraid that Mr. Arbery is going to be down or finally go for the gun or seek cover or something. Please turn, please turn. Please go off into this yard. He never, ever, when he left his driveway that day, thought that things would end this way. Not ever. He told us, I'm on the left side of my truck. I'm waiting for him to get by. He told us, if he would have run by me, no problem. I was giving him the opportunity to run by me. Travis doesn't have a duty to retreat. He's allowed to stay where he thinks he is lawfully allowed to be and to try to defend himself and others. And then Ahmaud takes that turn. Not this turn, but this one. And you'll see his feet come, his elbow raises, and Travis is thinking, if this guy gets a hold of my shotgun, this is not going to end well. He's going to end up with the shotgun and kill me. Travis is thinking, my son. Ahmaud comes around, squares up, and you will see Travis's head is right there. His head never comes past that seat post. But you will see Ahmaud come across to Travis, and the first shot happens right over here. You can watch up top as he moves across. You see the white shirt moving across in between those two headrests, and you see Travis's head never comes beyond that front end of his truck. It's all up here with the t-shirt. Right here, his head is down. He's in full charge. First shot has already happened. You can see the same movement under the truck. If you'll look here, this is the shadow. It's kind of, eventually becomes kind of circular like a stop sign, but you'll see it moving in between these wheels right here. You see it? There it is, moving back, coming forward, coming all the way across. He's charging with his feet. Travis is trying to brace himself. Is there any question that Ahmaud Arbery had his hands on this firearm? Any question at all? Travis, in his interview, told you, I was under shock, I was under stress, I don't know. If he had his hand on the gun, I think he did. I think he did. I think he had my shirt. I think he was punching me. Travis is in a state of disrepair. There is no question that Ahmaud's hands are on this gun. And the medical examiner from that stand told you that if Ahmaud Arbery is grabbing this gun and trying to pull it away, that as the gun gets pulled out of his hands and fired, it could fire right on that wrist and shoot into the chest and go across the body. Pull it straight out. No question. This is about this gun. Travis turns into Ahmaud, trying to use his entire body, pulls the end of the shotgun away from him, gets pushed across the road into the grass, and the second shot goes off. Here's the plume, and it's believed that it didn't hit Mr. Arbery. Travis, coming out of the grass now, trying to yank this gun from Mr. Arbery. Again, trying to yank it away from him. Ahmaud's hand still on it. Ahmaud's fist now raising. Is there any question that Ahmaud Arbery is assaulting Travis McMichael right before that third shot? Not one single bit of question. And that third shot goes off. And these two men end where they started, face to face, looking into each other's eyes. Never a word being spoken by Mr. Arbery. And it is absolutely horrific and tragic that this has happened. And again, this is where the law is intertwined with heartache and tragedy. You are allowed to defend yourself. You are allowed to use force that is likely to cause death or serious bodily injury if you believe it's necessary. At that moment, Travis believed it was necessary. This is a law that is for a person in Travis's situation. And you can do it to prevent death to yourself or a third person, or to prevent the commission of a forcible felony, like aggravated assault. Aggravated assault is a felony which can occur by use of fists. Greg McMichael with a hip replacement, heart attack, stroke, sitting in the back of that truck. Travis was afraid for him. If this was a case about wanting to murder a black jogger, if this was really a case about that, Travis would not have reacted the way he reacted. It was described to you by Brooke Perez. She talked about how totally freaked out he looked, how totally discombobulated he was. And she was right. The officer saying, just breathe, just breathe. Just Take a minute, just breathe. Just calm down. I know, just hold on a second. It was from that spot to this spot within just an hour and a half of what had happened, where he would be brought for several hours of questioning. He was afraid. He was in shock. His adrenaline was still going through his body. You guys know how fear and worry works. You sat here through jury selection all day and probably felt that just by getting asked questions for an hour. Travis testified, even though he didn't have to. The judge will give you the law that cloaks Travis in sort of a shield of silence. You don't have to testify. You are presumed innocent. You have the right to remain silent. The state has to prove that you did that. You don't have to get up there and testify. He did, because he wanted you to understand what happened from him. He told you about the thefts and the burglaries, the totality of the facts, why he believed what he did, that he wanted to follow him, that he wanted to talk to him, that he wanted to stop him, for the police to detain him. Don't be fooled by this word arrest. You don't have to announce you're under arrest. He told you why he raised the gun, because he was afraid that he would be on him within seconds, and the gun did exactly what he hoped it would be. It deterred him. And why ultimately he shot. The state wants to criticize Travis for testifying. I thought of this example as the state was talking about bias and prejudice. Travis is a liar. He's a liar because he has everything to gain by testifying here. He's got everything to lose by testifying. We are judgmental people. He's got 2 hours to tell you what happened at the risk of all of you sitting in judgment of him and saying, I don't believe him. He's got everything to lose. But should he be labeled as so biased because the state indicted him for murder and brought this case to a trial where he has the right to testify if he wants to? Should we label him biased and motivated and a liar because he took the stand? How about I say to any of you, prove your name. Prove to me what your name is. I'm going to make up a name since we're not naming you and we're not identifying you. My name is Patricia. Okay, Patricia, prove your name is Patricia. Well, okay, my mother. I'll bring my mother into court. What are we going to say about your mother? Well, of course she wants to help you prove your name is Patricia because she's your mother. She loves you. She's on your side. See, that's how that works. Well, here's a piece of paper that says, here's a piece of mail that says my name is Patricia. Well, of course you bring that document, but where'd that come from? You could have doctored that up. This kind of stuff, while credibility is for you to determine, this whole assuming that somebody is biased simply because they elect to come and tell you what happened is a game. It's an unfair game. I wanted to show you the law about arrest and what it says, that it doesn't require you actually announcing that you are under arrest. It's doing any seizing or taking or detaining, either by touching or by any act indicating an intention. Stop where you are, stop right now, and at the last moment, he said stop and get on the ground. Even along Holmes or Burford, stop. Stop. I want to talk to you. Stop. He's trying to detain him. Travis could have not gotten in his car. Travis could have told his dad, this is not going to work today, Dad. You can't sit in the baby seat. Let's just go back inside. Travis could have watched Ahmaud run down the road. He could have done everything other than what actually happened. He could have done any of that and wishes that he would have. But that does not mean that his actions on that day weren't rooted in the law that enabled him to go out there based on everything he knew to do what he did that day. Travis could have is another red herring. It's a flawed argument to take you off and to make you feel emotional about this case. That we would be here but for. but for. Well, of course that's true. But then we could go back and say, Travis wouldn't be here but for his grandparents, making his mother and father. But for is loose. That is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about probable cause, totality of circumstances, actual events. But for is some loosey-goosey, illegitimate term. You will not see it in the definition of probable cause. Travis told you, understanding that what he could have done differently that day would mean that Ahmaud Arbery was still alive. He told you. I know that. I know that I killed somebody. And me, and him, and our families, we will never be the same. And he carries that with him every day. The murder charge, along with the felony murder charge, the intentional acts is what those are broken down to. Intentionally choosing to commit a crime that either intends to take the life of somebody or ultimately takes the life of somebody. The only time in this case where life was in danger was at the very end of Holmes, when Mr. Arbery chose to cut that turn and go all the way across the front of that truck. Every time they encounter each other on this road, 3 times in front of Roddy Bryan's house, 2 times at the end, 2 times down here. If he wanted to kill him, that's just a nonsensical argument. This was not about taking someone's life that day. Mr. Rubin mentioned to you in his opening statement about duty and responsibility. And I agree with that. Travis felt a duty and responsibility. He has felt it when he served in the Coast Guard. He's felt it to his community, and he felt it on this day, on the 23rd of February, and he felt it during this trial when he took the stand and testified. He felt it was his duty and responsibility to do that. The state, too, has a duty and responsibility. They have a responsibility to be honest with you, to incorporate all of the facts, and take on their burden. The state spent 2/3 of their opening argument saying what we were going to say. It was like 2 kids getting in trouble, and the first one that gets to the parent and says, so-and-so did something, and the parent needs to say, well, hold on a second, let's hear from the other child. They have a duty to you to prove under the law that Travis, at the time he raised that gun, was not in fear. That at the time Travis shot Mr. Arbery, as he came across the front of that car and held the gun and punched him, that he was not in fear of receiving a serious injury or death. And they have a duty to prove to you that when Travis stopped to talk to Ahmaud, that he did so to commit a felony of aggravated assault. That means every time you're walking in your neighborhood and somebody pulls up a truck next to you and says hi or hey, they've committed an aggravated assault or a false imprisonment. Where's the evidence of that? The last duty that is here is yours. And this is a very, very tough one. You all understand, and I will not belabor, the lengths that we have gone to meet you, to understand who you are, to understand your background, to understand the thoughts that you have about certain things, and the way that we communicated with each other for several hours to arrive at the point where we felt in our hearts and our minds that you all would carry the banner of the duty and the responsibility that is yours as jurors. This courtroom is sacred. It is our last place for truth. It is where we pull it from the witnesses if we have to, and we present it to you. And we ask that you hold it dear and that you accept your duty to not erode the law as you sit here and think about what the law allows a citizen to do. It is going to take courage. It's going to take courage to set aside what you think and feel what may be trying to penetrate you from other sources that you have tried to do your best to avoid, and to focus on the bare facts of this case that have been captured on photograph and on video that have been testified to in this courtroom. It will take courage. In every count in this case, you're going to be asked to make a decision about each person accused. Travis McMichael will have his form, Greg McMichael his, and Roddy Bryant his. And you will be given the option on every one of these charges for not guilty or guilty. The evidence that's been demonstrated to you, I think, is overwhelming, but it doesn't come without hardship on you, consequence for these families. But I think the evidence is clear in this case. Travis had spent 9 years in the Coast Guard, search and rescue, policing the waters, sometimes 200 feet offshore, going into situations that were very difficult, working with law enforcement, reaching out and extending his hand as firefighter, law enforcement officer combination. For the first time in his life, Travis is now in those waters. He is now the one who needs help. Our goal here has been to do everything we can to dive into those waters, to search for the truth, to pull it from the icy depths and to raise it to the surface. And we have done that. We have done that with Travis McMichael. We have carried him to the surface to you. And now the choice is yours. Will you do as he has done in the past to others? Will you reach out your hand and extend it to Travis McMichael and pull him out of those waters?
What do you mean by that?
I think if you've heard anything that I've said, there's only one decision. He is not guilty on all charges.
Ain't that
Thank you all
speculation?
for your attention.
And that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, we can just go ahead.
That's
Yeah.
jury deliberation, right?
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are at a point we're going to break for lunch. We'll break for an hour. Or just a little bit under. We're going to reconvene at 1:30. Again, until all of the closing arguments have been made and you have received the final charge of the court, you are not to discuss this case amongst yourselves. So, with that instruction and all of the other instructions I've given you, enjoy your lunch. We'll see you back here at 1:30.
So rise for jury.